What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel. And yes, rockin' Ricky Bobby, shake and bake if you ain't first your last, motherfuckers. And yeah, I'm back with yet another album review as we are getting closer and closer to the end of the year. So this is the penultimate week of doing album reviews before we take a break for like a month and a half, roughly. So we're going to kick things off this weekend of November 22nd with one of the most anticipated albums of the year, and this was kind of a surprise considering I had not heard anything about this band for a while, other than a lineup shift that happened, I believe, last year or in 2022. But we are talking about the latest offering from one of my all-time favorite bands, Opeth, The Last Will and Testament. This came out on November 22nd on Reigning Phoenix Music. This is their debut on that label, and of course, album number 14 overall in their career. I mean, you guys know I'm a huge fan of Opeth. I've ranked them. I've reviewed, actually, their last three albums. I reviewed Pale Communion when it came out. I reviewed Sorceress when it came out, and a.k.a. Venom when it came out. So this has been one of those bands that I've kind of kept a streak going in terms of reviewing. So this will be the fourth straight review I've done for Opeth. Now, of course, Opeth, I would argue, the greatest metal band to come from Sweden. I will go ahead and state that right now. They are the greatest metal band from Sweden. Of course, progressive metal, progressive death metal, progressive rock, basically everything I love about music, all wrapped up into one. So, yeah, when this album was announced back during the summer, I was like, it's been a long time. It's been 5 years since a.k.a. Venom came out, and it's been the longest gap in their entire career. And of course, lineup shift. Drummer Martin Axelrod left, I believe, like I said, back in either 2022 or 2023. And in his place is Waltari, I'm not even going to try and pronounce his last name, but former drummer for Paradise Lost. He also played live with Bloodbath, Amorphous, also was in Bodom After Midnight. He even played in Valenfire, which was like a Death Doom project from members of Paradise Lost and My Dying Bride. So good pedigree, and the kid's around is pretty much around my age, so he's definitely the youngest member in Opeth's entire history by a landslide. So I was curious to hear what he was going to bring to the table, considering I've heard he's a hell of a drummer. And, well, this album, concept album, I think a.k.a. Venom was a concept album too. However, this is a proper concept album. It's, from what I read, it's about a post-World War I British family whose patriarch passes away, and in his last will and testament reveals a lot of shocking revelations about his family and friends and like who gets to have what, and how certain members of the family weren't even his own, and so on and so forth. So lots of revelations come out in the story that this album's telling. So now the interesting thing is, of course, there's only one track that has a proper title. Everything else they say is just paragraph number. So we kick things off with Paragraph 1, which was the first single of the album. And, well, you immediately get like mellotron and bass lines, kind of continuing where they've been going, particularly ever since Sorceress, where it's like it gradually has been getting heavier and heavier within their more prog rock oriented sound. And then there's even like atmospheric clean guitars, and it's rather mysterious. And then all of a sudden, big giant riffs, evil riffs might I add. Michael's cleans come in on full display. And then when the single came out and I listened to it and I heard Michael growling again on an Opeth album, I think all of us in the metal community were just like, what? What? Because for all of us, yeah, Michael hadn't growled on an Opeth album since Watershed, which was 16 years ago. Because all the material during the 2010s, it was all clean vocals. And while I will go ahead and say, I didn't mind Michael going all cleans, because I think most people need to remember, Michael Ockerfeld as a singer, phenomenal. Like, he's got a great tuneful, soulful croon. Whenever he gets high, it's pretty majestic, and when he's like super low, it sounds kind of gothic and dark. So he's like all around phenomenal singer. Although, yes, he has arguably a top three growl in death metal history. So I can understand why people were upset that he abandoned it on albums, but I thought we got a good trade off because I'm one of the few people who actually enjoyed Heritage for what it was and liked their albums as they kept going on even more. Like, I really liked Pale Communion, really liked Sorceress, and then Call to Venom was awesome when it came out in 2019. So it's like, as the prog rock era was going along, it was getting better and better and better as the albums kept going. But here, you bring the growls back and you think, well, is it only just a fan service or fan service album? No, it sounds like best way I would say to describe the album is this could have been the album released after Watershed and before Heritage, like the proper transition between their prog death metal sound and into the more progressive rock sound. However, I think I might like this as it's released now because I'll talk more about it when we get to the end. But with this track, the opening single, it perfectly balances like everything they've done in their career, from the death metal aspect to the prog rock. And of course, there's some chug, like there's some actual chugging riffs on this track. And then of course, I'll talk more about the solos when we get to the final song. But what was really cool on this track, as well as pretty much on like half of the album, you get spoken word from the legendary Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull, which, I mean, that definitely sounds like a Michael Ockerfeld move to get a prog legend to do something with an Opeth album, and who better than one of the godfathers of prog rock himself, Ian Anderson. And Ian, I gotta say, when he shows up, he actually shows up doing the spoken word on paragraphs 1, 2, 4, and 7. And it serves the album very well in terms of like him telling the story of the last Will and Testament stories as the album progresses. And then you get into paragraph 2, the following track. He not only does some spoken word stuff, but he also plays, well, actually, no, we'll get to that. But what I think some people may have not known, backing vocals on paragraph 2 were done by Joey Tempest from Europe. Yes, the final countdown, bring it all on, but he is a phenomenal singer, and while you couldn't really tell he was on this track, he is listed there in the liner notes. But the song itself starts off very Pink Floyd-esque. It gets into this like cool, like lumbering groove with a heavy riff and the growls on top. And then soothing cleans, but the bass. I gotta say, Martin Mendez is one of the best bass players I've ever heard. Like, he's able to do his own thing, but also follow along with the drums and the guitars, or do melodies to provide atmosphere. And that's what happens here on top of the clean vocals. He's providing atmosphere on top, but big doomy breakdown, I gotta admit. Like, this is one of the few moments on the album where I would say there's like a breakdown moment where it's kind of doom forward. And of course, like, massive dynamic shifts. Like, I gotta say, the dynamic shifts across the board on this album are phenomenal. The keyboards that come in, like Joachim Svalsberg, he's an awesome keyboardist, synth player, pianist, whatever. And these keyboard parts definitely harken back to Pink Floyd quite a bit. And then, of course, like, beautiful acoustics and vocals with Ian's spoken word coming in. But I gotta say, there's moments where it gets a little bluesy, and then there's even some death metal triplet chugs that kind of come up here, kind of harkening back a little bit to their old school era, like My Arms, Your Hearse, Deliverance, Ghost Reveries, like that particular era. Paragraph 3, which was the second single, starts off with like classic Opeth riffs and rhythms, some tasty strings. I gotta say, the symphonic elements from the London Session Orchestra, they do a phenomenal job. They don't overpower everything. They do everything very tastefully to go along with the music as well as the storytelling. But there's also some like really cool galloping rhythms on this track, and even some moments where it gets a little thrashy in the rhythms and then some of the riff writing. And then you get like Michael's lower register clean vocals, like those kind of gothic vocals. And then you get like these really cool triplet swings that feel like old school Opeth. Nasty low riffs, triplet chugs come back once again. And then I love the big dynamic shift where after the solos, it gets quiet for a couple seconds. Boom, you get into a real epic ending in the final 30 some seconds. Paragraph 4 starts off with groovy drums. Now, Walteri's drums, his drum work, awesome. Like, I think he's a great addition to Opeth. I don't know if I would call him the best drummer that Opeth has ever had. I mean, all of Opeth's drummers have been phenomenal. You know, Anders Norden, especially Martin Lopez and Martin Axelrod, and now Walteri. All phenomenal drummers in their own right. And he's doing some, like, really creative stuff with the grooves and also going along with the bass and the keyboards to start off. And then it just gallops along nicely. It's actually, I would say, one of the more moody songs on the entire album, as you get like cool trade-offs with Michael's vocals with the growls and the cleans. Ian's spoken word comes back. There's even some harp. Like, there's harp sections peppered in all throughout the album, and then it gets into acoustic guitars, which acoustic guitars during the first half of the album don't pop up as much as they would in the second half. And then I love the Hammond organ coming in, and then you get one of two moments where Ian Anderson's flute playing comes in, and it trades along nicely with the guitars, which I really, really like that. And there's some cool, like, dark melodic riffs and more chugging. So then you get into the second half where the songs get longer and a little more adventurous. Paragraph 5, soothing classical intro, drum grooves, and acoustics really shine on this track. And of course, the riffs and the dynamic changes definitely harken back a little bit towards Ghost Reveries. More leads and chugging. It's rather whimsical at times. There's even like a moment where there's this cool, like, speech effect on Michael's vocals where it's like he's giving a speech to somebody as he's singing. There's some like tribal moments on here with the percussion, which was really cool. And then you get into paragraph 6, which I think this track has so much going on. Like, you get Deep Purple-esque keyboards at the beginning. The drums are really fast. Like, Walteri's just going nuts on this song. Gets a little triumphant. There's gallops that kind of remind me of early 80s Iron Maiden a little bit. And then more of the death metal comes back. Some double bass drumming that just gallops along nicely. Even a synth lead along with the guitars. And I think one of the coolest moments on the entire album shows up here. Michael does his best, which I think was him kind of paying homage to Tom Warrior from Celtic Frost a little bit, because, you know, Tom Warrior always either did the ooh or hey. I think Michael was, when he did the hey on this track, he was thinking of Tom Warrior a little bit. The strings return, and of course, like, bass melodies, acoustics, clean guitars, and keyboards all come together at the very end, and it kind of reminded me of the song Dignity off of Incauda Venenum. Paragraph 7, the final paragraph track, bass and guitar chugs, heavy riffs that just sound really sinister and evil, high and low clean vocals coming in, and then Ian does more spoken word and does another flute section. Synth melody coming in with the guitars, keyboards really add a lot of atmosphere on here, and there's like little guitar moments where they make it sound even darker somehow. And of course, you know, gorgeous vocals towards the end from Michael, and then you all of a sudden get this giant mood shift where it gets even more sinister. And then to the closing track and the only title of the album, A Story Never Told. I think the whole album's phenomenal, but if I had to choose a real standout for me, A Story Never Told is, I will say, and this is a bold statement considering this band has written some beautiful songs, I would put this among the top 10, arguably top 5 most beautiful songs Opeth has ever written. Beautiful, clean melodies that just, soothes my soul. And then beautiful guitar melodies and piano come together, and Michael's clean vocals really shine on here. And there's even like some Gentle Giant inspired vocal rounds going on where everybody's singing and it sounds great. The strings really add a lot of atmosphere. Hell, I almost fucking cried listening to this song. And then, finally talking about the lead work. Lead work on this album is incredible. Like, Frederick Hawkinson is an unbelievable guitarist. I mean, absolutely incredible. But this solo on A Story Never Told might be up there among the best solos Opeth has ever done. It's 2 minutes straight, and I love how it fades out at the end. It's beautiful. The song itself, you could argue, kind of sounds like could be the, quote, heaviest song on Damnation, because it definitely feels like it could have fit on Damnation, but man, I just couldn't believe how gorgeous the song was. The whole album, I'm going to say right now, I don't have, well, the most minor gripe I had about this album. I do wish, I mean, when the guitars got heavy, they got heavy. However, I do wish they had a little more crunch to them, but I kind of like how they did the guitars, where it feels like heavy for the 70s kind of vibe, like a mid-70s album, where it was like, you could say, like, if this album came out in, like, 1974, 1975, it would have been considered one of the heaviest albums of the 70s. So I kind of like the aesthetic where it still sounds old school, but still done in modern day. Like, the production itself, it's organic, it's natural, it doesn't sound overproduced, even though you got a lot going on with the keyboards, the synths, and the strings, but it all sounds fluid. It all sounds organic. It doesn't sound fake or anything like that. So despite my very, 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 very tiny nitpick about the guitars, I still love the tone for what it was, meant to feel like a really heavy 70s tone. But overall, this is easily, well, I guess I shouldn't say easily, because Encalda Venom was great, but I would say this is definitely the best Opeth album since Watershed. This is a 5 out of 5. This is hands down going to be on my year-end list, and it just, again, has made the list even more difficult, because, oh my god, this album is just beautiful, awesome from top to bottom, and it's not just because Michael's growling again, but, like, musically, it feels like a new beginning for Opeth, where it feels like we're going back a little bit to our roots, but still maintaining what we've been doing over the past 10 plus years. So I'm curious to know, when the next album happens, if they're going to push even further into the heavy direction, but still maintain the clean beauty of the last few albums, but just go further on it. Only time will tell. But anyways, that does it for this review. What did you guys think? And I know this was a long review, but I was passionate to talk about this because Opeth is one of my favorite bands of all time, and this was such a giant listen, it required a longer review. So let me know in the comments below what you guys thought, and don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Thank you for watching. Keep your horns high and your dreams wet.
Thank you for your patronage.